The secret of his appeal. He was, after all, a ruggedly attractive book. Daisy Goodwin explores the source of pleasure, that is, the romantic novel.
I'm here to celebrate and defend this despised literary genre.
Reader, I Married Him, coming soon on BBC Four.
For one pioneering record label, there were only two rules to rock and roll.
These guys were outsiders. They were cool. They were on our side.
Rule one, there are no rules.
Get down there, take the guitar, and don't leave until you get arrested.
I don't think I've ever seen a more unlikely pop star in my life.
Rule two,
if it ain't stiff, it ain't
the
working.
fantastic celebration of the music and madness of the record label that changed pop music. Stiff Nights, Friday at 9 on BBC Four.
Joyce Grenfell Night on BBC Four, now inviting you to match your musical wits against the panel in Face the Music.
Hello everyone, and I hope you're all ready to face the music with Joyce Grenfell.
How do you do?
Robin Ray, don't adjust your sets, he really is that colour. And Patrick Moore.
Hello.
Now we call our first round tonight Star-Crossed Lovers. No reference to the sky at night is intended, Patrick. Here are three pieces of music, all of which are associated with tragic lovers. Can you identify the music? First, Robin.
What a horrible one to start with. I thought of 5 star-crossed lovers, and that wasn't any of them. It's, I thought it might be, no, I won't say what I thought it might be, because that'll be the next one. But I thought it would be one by Tchaikovsky. And that sounds like Tchaikovsky to me.
Do you want a hint?
Oh, I would say that I was fairly desperate for a hint, yes.
Right, well, it's a composer that our friend Bernard Levin doesn't care too much for.
Oh, of course. Yes. We all know Bernard's little peccadillos, don't we? He doesn't care for Hector Berlioz.
Right.
And so it must be, yes, there are,
Yes, I see that I'll have to quote something. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life.
Oh, well, now, this is thoroughly shaming. Yes, I do actually recognise that quotation. It seems vaguely familiar. I thought it would be by Tchaikovsky. It's Romeo and Juliet by Berlioz.
Thank you.
Oh, God. What a sweat.
Now, Joyce, your star-crossed lovers.
Well, now, it's Russian. And I think...
Stay clear of Tchaikovsky, I
well,
say.
no, it's Tchaikovsky. It must be Tchaikovsky.
Yes.
Yes. And I suppose it's Romeo and Juliet, is
Right,
it?
correct. Lastly, Patrick.
Wait a moment. That's Russian too, isn't it? And I think it's Mr. Prokofiev.
Correct.
And I don't know the plot to Prokofiev. I'm going to take a wild gamble on the Love of the Three Oranges.
Well, what about this star-crossed lovers, love?
Well, the only thing I can think of is love. Lovely free oranges.
Say it again, Patrick. We've all said it before. Say it again.
What about these star-crossed lovers?
Yes, exactly. Well, it could be Romeo and Juliet.
Well, the next is pretty easy because it's face the consequences. You've got your cards, fill them up from the musical clues, and you end up with something like you're having a game of consequences, only you don't pass your cards on.
We've been very difficult lately.
It's going to be very easy now.
Good.
Right. Are you ready?
Yes.
First, a male character. You can certainly write that one with a grin. Met a female character. On, this is when they met.
Can you guess who it is? And when he's reached the summit, can you guess what he'll say? He will call butterfly from a distance. I, without answering, hold myself quietly concealed, a bit to tease him and a bit so as not to
All happy?
Yes.
So far.
He said to her,
You called me when the moon had veiled her light. Before I went from you into the night, I came. Do you remember? Back to you.
It's like taking dictation, that one.
tell me when you're ready.
Yes. Yes.
She said to him,
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
the consequence was, nevertheless, they spent a... Well, who would like to give the first one? Robin?
Yes, the first one was Bernard should have done this one. It was Lohengrin by Wagner.
Quite right.
Wagner's
Met.
Lohengrin.
Patrick?
I think that was Anitra from Grieg.
Quite right. Yes. On, Joyce?
One fine day.
Yes. And did you know who was singing?
Oh, I didn't.
It
I
was
was
the
too
voice
busy
of
writing.
Joan Cross.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh, how lovely.
He said to her, anybody?
You
called me
when the moon had left the night. Or words to that effect.
Yes, exactly.
I hear you calling me.
I hear you calling. Yes.
You calling me. Wasted my I know, you're crying because you're a musician, aren't you?
Right. Anyhow, that was sung by John McCormack on a very old record.
Ah, I guess that.
And she said to him, Joyce...
Charlie is my darling.
Yes. Do you know who arranged it?
No, oh. Frank Bridges,
Beethoven.
was it? Beethoven?
Beethoven?
Yes.
No.
Yes, arranged by Beethoven. Yeah. And the consequence was, nevertheless, they spent a...
Something to do with Delius.
And something to do
on
with
a
summer, I think.
night.
Yes,
Was
everything
it a
except
summer-
one word.
Summer something.
Summer night on the...
Bear Mountain. Well, you said it was one fine day, didn't you?
There's Summer Night on the River.
Of course, on the river. We weren't far off, were we?
No.
Now, I'll just recap these answers. Lohengrin, prelude to Act 3 of Wagner's opera, met Anitra's dance from Grieg's Peer Gynt on One Fine Day, sung by Joan Cross. He said to her, I Hear You Calling Me, sung by John McCormack. She said to him, Charlie is my darling. It's part of a Beethoven arrangement. And the consequence was, nevertheless, they spent A Summer Night on the River by Delius. Now for our hidden melody. And this is where I wrap up a tune in the style of a composer, and you have to guess the tune and the style.
Rogers Grieg.
Yes.
Yes.
And June is busting out all over.
Correct.
It was lovely, Joe. Lovely one. Lovely one.
Right, now we go over to the archives. This is where we play you bits of old films and recordings of musicians in action. And you have to guess the artist. Tonight, it's a conductor. Can you name him and also the music he is conducting?
Yes, but who is he?
I don't
Is
think
it
I'm
Bruno
right.
Walter?
No.
No.
Shall we establish the piece first?
Beethoven.
Beethoven.
Beethoven's Overture to Egmont.
Correct. The Symphony of Victory at the end of the overture.
No.
Now, who was conducting?
It's a Russian.
Right?
Is it a Russian?
Yes, it's a Russian who spent a lot of time in America.
Serge Kouzovitsky.
Right. Well done, Robin.
Boston Philharmonic.
The Boston
He
Symphony.
conducted,
Yes.
didn't he?
Yes.
Oh, it's symphony, was
Symphony,
it?
yes. Did you know that he was a double bass virtuoso and actually wrote a concerto for double bass and used to tour giving double bass recitals? Seems extraordinary, doesn't it?
Not when he was, before he conducted.
Another little bit of Jen is that, of course, there was the Koussevitzky Music Foundation,
Yes.
which commissioned many works, I believe, including Peter Grimes.
Did he?
Fine. Well, anyway, now it's your turn to take a breather while we ask our guest to come and face the music. And tonight she's a very distinguished soprano whose voice you've actually already heard on this program. And this very evening, I mean. She's retired from singing. We still think of her as one of the stars of the Sadler's Wells Opera. And, of course, we think of her so much as a first night performer of so many of the Benjamin Britten operas. We welcome tonight Joan Cross. Joan, did you hear me sticking my neck out about Koussevitzky and Peter Grimes behind the screen there?
Yes, I did.
Did I get it right, or was I not?
Yes, I think you got it right. I think Ben had the idea of Peter Grimes probably some time back. And then...
Well, when he was living in the States?
When he was in the States. And then there was the question of finding the time to compose it and all that sort of thing. And Koussevitzky, I think, came up with a grant for it. And Grimes, of course, is dedicated to his wife. You know that. Yes.
Well, I'd forgotten that fact.
Yes, yes.
Good,
Yes.
so it wasn't far wrong.
No, you were right, you were right.
Now, your first question, what have these two pieces in common? Here's the first. The Joan Cross evening, you're quite right. Anyhow, here's the second. What have the two
Well,
got
I
in common?
can't think what the first piece is. Well, the first is La Bohème.
Yes.
And the second is one of a trilogy which is known, or used to be known in my days, as The English Ring.
Which is, of
Bohemian
course,
Girl.
The Bohemian Girl.
And then there was another one called Maritana.
But another sort of Victorian opera.
Yes, another one called The Lily of Killarney. And they all had delicious tunes in them. Part of my history, my youthful history, is that I did a tour with Maritana, which is a ghastly piece. You've no idea.
Who wrote Maritana?
Wallace.
Wallace. That's right, this one.
And there was a piece in it called Yes, Let Me Like a Soldier Fall.
Oh, yes.
And this we performed, I hate to tell you what dates, I won't tell you, in the Ilford Hippodrome, and pennies rained down from the gallery onto the stage. They hated it.
Incidentally, in that first aria, you were singing with...
Webster Booth.
Webster Booth, yes. It's a lovely record. It's an old record, but it still comes out quite well.
It's a horrible record, as a matter of fact, because I don't sing in tune.
Don't you?
But it was made after a night of bombing. And it was when the bombs were raining down on London. And I remember walking down Kingsway over glass, you know, which had all sort of, come from smashed windows, and making this record, not having slept a wink the night before, you know.
But I didn't. It didn't sound out of tune to me.
Last parties.
Is it? Now, your next question is, what is final about this?
What a pity you didn't begin it earlier. This is Rosenkavalier.
Yes.
The Last Curtain.
Yes. Now, it's a last curtain in another sense that I'm thinking, actually, because, tell me again if I'm wrong, but wasn't it the last opera done at Sadler's Wells before the war?
It was the last new opera that we did. It was the new opera that we did the season before the war. And we only, alas, did 7 performances of it, and then came the end of that particular season and the end of, temporarily, of Sadler's Wells because of the war.
What happened, actually, when the war broke out? Were you able to take your Sadler's Wells opera on tour?
When the war broke out, actually, the whole thing shut down, you see, and there was a blackout, as you know, and all the theatres shut down. Then gradually they began to open for matinees, and we also did some matinees which were tremendously oversubscribed. We couldn't get the people in, you know, sort of thing. And eventually, during the first silly war period, you know, when nothing happened and everybody was expecting something to happen, we simply got back to normal, excepting that occasionally we had air raid warnings. I remember one air raid warning which began in the middle of Aida and then went on, and the first thing that was said was Amanazar, who said, "The people are now waiting for the signal." And then eventually, that awful September the 7th, when London was firebombed, finished the whole thing, until we went out on tour, and we toured for the rest of the war. Thousands of miles.
You did?
Hundreds
Great
of-
discomfort, no doubt.
Huge discomfort, yes. Yes, but, you know, it was fun in a way.
Now, Joan, here you are singing again and singing something very lovely. And while we all listen to you, what I want you to do is to think of how many East Anglian associations you can connect with this music. 4 or 5? Just see.
Well, one of the first things I remember about East Anglia was meeting Ben Britton. And I went to stay with him he lived then in a mill at Snape. And this was a very strange, very attractive place. I remember staying there, and I remember playing this game with him. We all played tunes on the piano and said, "Do you know what this is?" You know, sort of thing. And then I remember walking along the front at Aldeburgh towards the end of the war, when the first ideas of the Aldeburgh Festival were conceived. I think that's the limit of what I remember.
Marvellous. Now, can we relate it actually to the actual piece, which is not, of course you know it, but the audience might know it. Can we just identify the piece and take a few more from there?
In what way, do you mean? I mean, story of or something?
Well, let's just say what the actual piece was you were singing.
Peter Grimes.
Yes.
Yes.
It was the embroidery aria, wasn't it, from Peter Grimes? Well, let's think out 1 or 2 more. What about the poet?
George Crabbe.
Yes, that's another one. What about the character you were playing?
Ellen Orford.
Isn't there a village called?
Yes, there's a village called Orford, thank you. But the interesting thing about Ellen Orford in the poem itself is she's such a desperately tragic character. All her children went to the bad, husband committed suicide, and she went blind, which is really rather terrifying, but couldn't possibly be put in the opera.
Mm-hmm. Just one other type of association which you haven't mentioned.
What?
You live in Suffolk.
But that's to do with, that's all to do with another opera altogether. This is Albert Herring.
Oh.
My favourite role, you see, Lady Billowes, who lived in a place in the opera called Loxford. And I now live in Yoxford.
How lovely.
Lady Billowes has returned home.
Well, thank you very, very much
very
indeed
welcome.
for
Thank
coming
you.
on the programme.
Thank you.
And giving us such pleasure. We're going back to the panel for a free-for-all question, the funny opera.
Yes, well, we will need our help with it.
This is where we show you a scene from an opera with the wrong music attached to it, and the music is also from an opera. Can you tell the name of the opera you see and the opera you hear?
Quite a production.
It's the biggest stage I've ever seen.
Well,
It's enormous. Upset me at the end.
well, now, who would like to speak?
Not me, really.
We looked for hints. It's Romans and
no,
those sort of
Egyptians.
soldiers in a hot
Egyptians,
land
aren't
like...
they? Is it Aida?
Yes, it is Aida. Well done, Joyce.
I thought it was Aida.
And what were you listening to?
Ah, well, that's another.
I tried to get a signal from our guest here, but all she did was look at me and go,
And you get your gun.
There's only one thing to do. Let us ask Joan Cross if she'll tell us.
Well, it's Frashets, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
the Wolf Glen scene.
From what?
The scene from the Wolf Glen.
Yes.
I'm not very up on this opera, but you know.
not
I'm not
much
up
you're
at
not.
all.
You're more up on it than we are.
I'll write down.
I'm no more up than I was to start with.
Well, anyway, that's what it was. It was quite correctly, as you said, Joan Cross said, it's Der Freischütz, the Free Shooter by Weber. That's what you were listening to, and you were looking at Aida, the Grand Triumphal March.
Yes, I don't know my
Lastly, we
Beethoven, I'm
come
afraid.
to, lastly we come to our dummy keyboard, which, as you know, makes no sound except a bit of a rattle, and you have to guess what I'm going to play from my movements only. And for you at home, we'll give you some sound after a bit. Now, tonight it's going to be a sonata, and a quick rider to the question is, why is it a sonata suitable for beginners?
Oh, that was very nice. Would you get very bad tempered if we told you it was called in an 18th century drawing room?
I shouldn't mind a bit,
They
but it
did
wasn't
make
called that by the composer.
No, it wasn't indeed. It
We
was
know
called
who the
a
composer
We know
was,
who
too.
the composer was.
We know who
We know
he
the
was.
key.
You know the key?
I don't know
Mozart.
the
Well, tell us.
Mozart C major sonata.
Quite right, yes.
key. Why is it
Kosher number
called a little...
545.
545. Right,
Yes.
right, first time. Right.
And why was it suitable for beginners?
Because it had a nasty little subtitle called Sonata Facile or something like that.
You're quite right. This is the one only sonata that Mozart put in the catalogue, in this sort of thematic list of works. An easy sonata suitable for beginners.
I didn't find it so, I must confess.
No, nor me.
No. You should do very well, you know. You want to take this up for a living.
Well, I'm afraid that's it for tonight. So it's good night from Joyce Grenfell, from Robin Ray, Patrick Moore, Joan Cross, and me, Joseph Cooper. Good night.
Well, stay with us for an episode of Joyce Grenfell's own light entertainment show from 1972. That's next.
They are the highest medical team in the world.
I'm an emergency medicine specialist. I like really sick people.
Operating in the extremes of Everest.
They're in the death zone. They have limited ability to deal with the surroundings.
Everest ER, the world's most extraordinary hospital. Part of Everest Night, Tuesday at 9 on BBC 4.
Caressing her hair provocatively, she gazed across, smiling at him. Why was he so admired? She desired the escapism that he offered. Would she ever understand the secret of his appeal? He was, after all, a ruggedly attractive book. Daisy Goodwin explores the source of pleasure, that is, the romantic novel.
I'm here to celebrate and defend this despised literary genre.
Reader, I Married Him, coming soon on BBC 4.